Shakalaka boom, baby. Let's go. What's cooling? What's going on? Why am I saying weird words? I have no idea, but we got the Dolphins. Maybe that's a little bit why. This Miami Dolphins team, injuries, a big thing about this organization right now. There's a lot of questions we got to mention with the coaching staff. Does the GM Will Greer, does he still have a job after the season? Like, there could be a whole new regime coming in after the season for the Miami Dolphins. This football team in general has so many interesting components going into it. So let's break this thing down. We're going to talk about the roster, the areas that they're strong at right now, and the areas more importantly, as of this moment, that they're weak in. And how do they get better? Free agency strategy, draft, all those things, coaching. It's a key element. But starting with the offense here, and starting with quarterback Tua Tagovailoa, he's still the franchise guy to me. I know I'm seeing a lot of mock drafts where you're drafting quarterbacks for this football team. I just don't think that makes a lot of logical sense. Tua's under contract. The only argument beyond that would be if you're saying you're really worried about the concussion thing with Tua Tagovailoa. But to me, it comes down to protecting him and having a good front five. Like, that is the key for this football team. And I get it. They're injured right now. They should be a little bit better in a few weeks. James Daniel, Austin Jackson, though, there's no timetable. Aaron Brewer's a little banged up right now. You got Jonas Savaiinaea, who looks really rough at guard. Like, he is just not, he's got stone feet right now. I don't know what that's going on. Maybe it's because he's not in his natural position at left guard. And I would say, hey, try him at right guard at this point. Why not, right? You got Cole Stranger at right guard. Put Cole over at left guard. That's more of his natural position. Put Savaiinaea over at right guard. Like, that is something where it's almost like, oh, what's going on over in the coaching room? Maybe they're seeing something different. I mean, I'm not there every single day, so it's easier for me to sit here and say that. But as of right now, I would just think it'd make a lot more sense. Put Cole Strange on his natural side. Put Jonas Savaiinaea out on his right side. And that makes a lot more sense. So that's kind of where, a little nitpick there with this whole situation. But going back to the Tua conversation, I think he's the franchise quarterback still. You got to protect him. You got to add more weapons to this offense. You got to improve the defense, all right? He's not been the culprit of every single loss this season. He's actually been okay. It's not been perfect by any standards. Overall, there's a lot of other areas that this team, you get a quarterback, trust me, they're not, even if you draft the next Patrick Mahomes, which would be awesome, I'm just saying, like, even if you did that, this roster still is not a Super Bowl caliber football team. So improving some of the pieces around him is such an important deal. Quinn Ewers maybe can step up in that back role with Zach Wilson being the free agent there. Running back wise, this is not a big need. You got Devin Achane, one of the better running backs in the NFL, the most explosive running back in the NFL, and definitely one of the most dynamic. So you got Ollie Gordon in there as a good backup. He's had a couple of good weeks already stacking on, and he's proved to people not to doubt him just because of this last season at Oklahoma State. He looks more like vintage Ollie Gordon at times this year. He's had a couple of really nice runs, I'll say that. And I think he's going to get worked into the rotation even more, especially with Jalen Wright really kind of getting benched and whatnot, and some favorites with the coaching staff. And overall, I think that Ollie Gordon and Achane are a great 1-2 punch. I have no problem with that for the future. It could be a late round UDFA sort of consideration, but that's about it for depth, especially if Jalen Wright would be a just a cut if they don't want to keep him on the roster after this season. Then we go into the receiving room, which you did lose Tyreek Hill, and that is unfortunate. But at the same time, I think a lot of Dolphins fans are fed up with that whole scenario and are ready to move on. And I fully do expect Tyreek Hill to be on the move this offseason, whether it's just a straight up cut or a trade. I would be shocked if he really is on the roster next year. If he was, then it'd be something where he's going to have to take a pay cut, because that $51 million cap hit, that ain't going to work out for this football team going into the offseason. I'll tell you that right now. We'll see what happens there. Ultimately, wide receiver is a need for this football team. Is it a first-round need? Not necessarily. You got Jalen Waddle, who is very much a good wide receiver. Obviously, I have him listed as a star wide receiver in the NFL. I don't think he's an elite wide receiver, but I think he's a very good one. And he's been making a big time let of plays this year. Really of a bounce-back year for Jalen Waddle. You got Malik Washington. In Washington, I've seen it in limited roles. He's on jet sweeps, and he's a great, return man and stuff like that. So, guy can't, he's if nothing else, a great wide receiver for. Still need to look at that upgrade in that department. And then offensive line. I don't skip Darren Waller. How rude of me. Jeez Louise. Darren Waller, he still got it too, by the way. I'm telling you, he was dominant, especially in that first half in the Panthers game. They couldn't stop him to save, nothing on that defense. They couldn't cover him. And it really just comes down to he's a free agent. He came out of retirement. I'm not expecting him to come back. I don't know. If he does, if he wants to come back, then I would re-sign him on the cheap. Like, there's nothing against that at all. I think Waller is an absolute stud still. Julian Hill, Tanner Connor, you got Conyers who's injured. Maybe Conyers, though, down the line could end up being a good number two. Definitely has the upside there to watch out for. The offensive line, though, also, I will say with tight end, it is still a need if you lose Darren Waller. Like, that is another area with wide receiver that I think would be a top priority to fill on this offense. Now, the offensive line, as I was mentioning earlier, the injuries. We'll see when Daniels, when Jackson, they come back. I know Brewer's also dealing with a little bit of an injury. I think it's a pec right now, so he's kind of like limited. He's questionable game time decision sort of thing for the Chargers. And if they lose him, I'm guessing they're going to try to move. Like, I haven't looked at any reports on this just yet, but I'm guessing they may be moving like a Cole Strange, or maybe Brunskill ends up stepping up over there at center. That would make a lot of sense too. So we'll see what happens there. Seven, as I mentioned before, has got to get better. It is his rookie season, so I'm not ready to put up the white flag and give up or anything like that, but got to play better, got to see some improvement as the season goes along, or I'll be even more concerned about that. For right now, we're going to lock it in. They have all 5 of their starters technically under contract. Now, at the same time, I am not laying on my laurels there and saying, oh, we're good to go. We need to get some guys in free agency. We need to get some guys in the draft. Now, here's where I was wrong last year, because I was watching Patrick Paul and I was a little worried going into the season. Like, how is he going to look, right? He has been their best offensive lineman, period, in my opinion. I think he has been fantastic so far for a second-year player, especially coming off of some of the technique issues he had last year. He looks like a different player. So I was wrong, and I will be the first one to admit it. I think Patrick, well, I mean, look, I said Patrick Paul's got a lot of upside, just got to develop in his hand technique, and he has put the work and time and effort into it. He looks like a new man out there. I don't know what it is, but he certainly looks really good. I don't want to jinx him, nothing like that, but so far this season, he has definitely exceeded my expectations and become a very solid starter thus far in the season. Now, on the opposite end, Austin Jackson, he is going to be going into a contract year next year. So, no matter which way you look at this, you need to invest in a right tackle of the future. And Austin Jackson, could they move him inside the guard? Possibly, yes. Like, you could still draft a Spencer Fanu in the first round, put Jackson inside at right guard if you don't feel confident with James Daniels and his injury history, or if Jonas Savaiinaea, if you want him to be more of a backup going in next year, that's an option too. So you could make Savaiinaea compete with Jackson for guard and Daniels. Like, those be your 3 guards. I have no issues with that either. We'll see how things play out, but there are a lot of other needs on this roster. But offensive line depth is a critical one, and trying to find some guys that aren't, always in crutches, right, and injured. Unfortunately, it happens, and it's nothing against these guys. It happens, and stuff like that. Now, defensively wise, boy, oh boy, where to begin here, because the interior and the run defense is so bad. This interior defensive line is the worst in the NFL right now. However, they've invested in it. And when I'm like looking into the draft and looking into free agency, they need to let Benito Jones play more. Like, what is going on? This is another head scratching thing. Like, get Benito Jones out there. He is their best run defender. And when they're like, Phillips and Grant have the potential to be that. And I think down the line, defensive tackles a grown man game, and it typically takes a couple of years for defensive tackles to really build up some steam. You got Zach Seiler, who clearly is struggling right now as well. Like, he's just, it's like you think of Seiler, oh, he's a really good football player. I just have not seen him make a whole ton of plays this year thus far. I've seen Matthew Butler make more plays at times this season in his situational role. So overall, this interior defensive line is a very tricky situation, because you could sit here and say, you know what, maybe we need to go draft Peter Woods with our first round pick. I just don't know if that's the right thing, because you do have Phillips, you got Grant, you spent a first round pick on, you got Seiler under contract, you just gave an extension to. You got Biggers as well as a late round pick who can be a good solid nose defender down the line. They're just so young at the moment. They really need that veteran guy like a Benito Jones to step up early on, while some of these guys like Phillips, Grant, and Biggers develop. That's really the thing. And that's why I'm just a little bit surprised with how it's worked. You got guys like Jordan Brooks and Tyrell Dodson who have been solid. They've made a lot of tackles because they've had to. So, there's that. But I don't think they've blown me away or anything. Overall, linebackers an area where both of those guys are free agents in 2027. They could cut one of them if they wanted to save a little bit of money. I would say it's more of a draft and develop, like mid-round, somewhere in the 3rd through 5th round range. Get a developmental guy and be able to look into that going into 2027 beyond. So moving on to the edge room, another big question here is, what do they do with some of these contracts? Jalen Phillips is a free agent, and you're going to have to make a big decision on him. I hear he's getting trade rumors right now. So we'll see how that all works out. I think that with Phillips, though, if you can't get more than a second round pick, which the injury history is going to be a thing to watch out for with Jalen Phillips, he's a great player when he's on the field. And I do think he's their most impactful defensive lineman as of right now from just watching this season. And if you can say, hey, he's healthy, like, yeah, I would definitely re-sign him. I wouldn't trade him because I do think he's a really, really good football player. Bradley Chubb's been disappointing this season. I haven't seen him make a whole ton of plays. Carolina, I thought he was a little bit more of an impact in that game in general, though. Like Chop Robinson, Bradley Chubb need to see a little bit more. And maybe they move on from Bradley Chubb. Like, they're going to have to move on from one of those guys between Phillips and Chubb, in my opinion, just because the injury history is so big and they can't afford to pay all of these guys. So they're going to have to make a decision. For me personally, I would lean towards trading Chubb or letting him go and re-signing Jalen Phillips. Trade deadline, though, could bring a lot of different unique things. So we'll monitor that situation, and we'll have to update this mock draft as we go along. But for right now, I would say that one of those guys will be on the move here very, very soon. So draft-wise, though, you still have to figure Chop Robinson steps up for one of those guys and ends up being a starter for this football team. So it's not like a first or second round type of need. It's probably more of a late day 2, early day 3 type of priority in this case for some depth, and then a free agent type of need as a veteran presence in here. Cornerback room is a big need. It's a first, second round type of need. This is a red alert. This is get some help in the room. Call grandma. Hey, please. No, I don't know. That doesn't make any sense. But anyway, you know what I'm saying? Like, call somebody, Ghostbusters, right? They got to cue the Ghostbusters out here. Now, I will mention here, Cornell Armstrong, I believe he just got waived. So pardon me, things in news is going on right now. I think they just brought in somebody else. It might have been Brandon Phil. Either which way, the roster may not be 100%. It is always shaking and baking and things like that with Armstrong getting injured, who was in the slot. Now you're going to have to lean on Minka Fitzpatrick and maybe a Fetu Metal Fonwu. Those guys are going to have to fill in for that spot now, losing Cater Coho, of course, early on for the season. Jason Marshall's injured right now, and then Cornell Armstrong. So they've been banged up in the secondary too, unfortunately. I know it's no laughing matter, but it's just at this point, it's so unfortunate for this football team. Now, the rest of this room here, in terms of what they need to do in locked-in starters, I would say there's no locked-in starters going into next year. Storm Duck has some promise there, and he should be coming back really, really soon from injury, and we'll keep an eye out on how he looks because he could be somebody that could be a starter for this football team going into the offseason and into next year. At least making him compete with a draft pick or a free agent, I think, is vital, and improving the secondary is a absolute red alert. So we're going to be doing that 100%. Rasul Douglas, solid veteran, but once again, like, could they use an upgrade there? Absolutely. Safety, another area that still needs another upgrade besides Minka Fitzpatrick. And I wouldn't say Minka Fitzpatrick is prime Minka Fitzpatrick at this point. He's not a bad player. He's made some plays. I also have seen him get beat a couple of times. He looks a little slower than some years in past. Maybe he looks a little bit more beefed up too. And I mean that in a good way. He's rocked up and stuff like that. He can definitely come down. But Elijah Campbell's a little banged up too right now. You got Fetu Melifano, who's been banged up throughout his career. You got Dante Trader, what was a 5th-round pick from Maryland that has some developmental upside there. He's seen some rotational snaps and also special teams ability. Ashton Davis is, once again, from the Jets. I've seen a lot from Ashton Davis through the years, and he's a good rotational player, third safety. I don't know if I lean on him as a full-time starter. So he's also a free agent. That's why safety, if nothing else, is a free agent need plus a draft pick. This is another area where a 3rd, 4th round draft in this safety class would make a lot of sense because the safety class looks pretty dang good. And I think you can find some really good value at that point in the draft. So this defense needs some resurgence. We need to add some talent. We got a lot of draft picks. The corner room is top of the list. Secondary in general, linebacker of the future, get some edge depth, and let's hope that defensive tackle position kind of builds some strength and gets stronger and stuff like that. Now, coaching-wise, because this whole coaching staff could be gone after the season, I really don't know. I like Mike McDaniel a lot. I mean, he's a great personality. I think he's somebody, players can relate to, and I think that he is going to get a offensive coordinator job lightning quick. Right now, though, maybe it is going to be best for a change of scenario for both parties. And that's sometimes it just needs to happen. Maybe Mike McDonald is not ready yet. Mike McDaniel is not quite ready yet. And that happens, right? We've seen that through the years where these young guys, they need a little more time, a little more seasoning. And I think Mike McDaniel is in that department. And here's some coaching candidates. I've listed these before. There's plenty of other coaching candidates. We'll keep an eye on some of these guys. I would love Joe Brady if he comes in division. Oh, that'd be insane. But bringing Joe Brady in here, I think he'd be a perfect fit too with the personnel and what they have. He can improve this offensive line out a lot. And overall, that would be a big priority for Joe Brady. So, yes, Joe Brady would be a nice one. GM candidates, I don't have a whole ton off the top of my head right now, but I'll definitely have to do some research on that if Greer is gone after this season. Now, let's get into free agency. Starting with the team cuts here, I am going to say cut, trade, Bradley Chubb, Tyreek Hill. We got to save some money. There is a lot of dead money on here, but at the same time, you got to move on. You got to save some cap, in my opinion. This would save us $30 million from both of these guys, just strictly from cutting them basically alone now, and even from trading them too. So I gotta factor that in. I'm not post June 1st any of these guys right now. We'll take a look more at that as we go into the offseason stuff overall. But for right now, I'm just gonna go straight cut them, get the cap save right this moment that we can use right away. $34 million. Plus, I do it to cut Alec Ingold. I mean, Ingold's a solid fullback. I just feel like we got to save and we got to nickel and dime a little bit. Even Jason Sanders, if Riley Patterson continues to be a solid option for them, then they could do that too. I mean, it's just something to think about. Sanders been a solid kicker for them, so that's why I didn't do that. But that is something to keep an eye on. He should be back very soon as well, from my understanding. On to the restructure period. I'm going to just restructure one player here. It's going to be Tua Tagovailoa. I'm going to save $20 million by moving $24 million of his base salary into bonus over that spread of the 6 years. That gets you to $20 million. It's basically 24 divided by 6. And that basically adds in an extra $4 million of cap for every single one of those years, plus the void years. And that gets us up to $54 million to spend in free agency. And first and foremost, we got to re-sign some of our guys. And you can see there's a lot of red here, especially on offense. I just said to ourselves, look, Darren Waller would be the one guy here, or maybe even Liam Eichenberg, I guess. But overall, I'm going to try to start fresh for the most part. If Waller does want to play some more, then we'll bring him back to help out. But for right now, let's go ahead, especially if there is a new regime coming in. It would make a lot of sense to bring in some players outside. Defensively, though, I bring in a couple of guys back here with Phillips, Jones, Britt, and Coho. Coho would be somebody like an approve it 1-year deal, and we could get really cheap. I feel like the value at this point, keep him in the slot. All right, and I'm cool with that. Maybe, we can find something here going to a contract or off of an injury for Coho. Britt, good solid depth. Make sure we have something there. Benito Jones can be another. You keep him in the veteran room at that department. And Jalen Phillips is the big contract, 4 years, $108 million. It's a big contract. I get it, but he's still a great player, and just hopefully some of those injuries are behind him. He's not like somebody that's like insanely prone to injuries. I know he's had a couple of season-ending stuff, so you got to keep an eye on that. But overall, I think that's why maybe not topper end of money, and that is somewhere still that is relatively fair considering all the edge room market right now. You got to pay edge rushers. It is just what it is. I want to bring him back. So here's just a list of like restricted free agents. These guys, just going to go ahead and bring them back. Some will come back, some won't. And we factor in practice squad and stuff like that. This is just kind of like miscellaneous budget, basically, is what this is. I figure Matthew Butler's been solid this year. And, if Keon Smith gives you some tackle guard viability, we'll go and do that. So on to the signing portion here. We had to make some strategic maneuvers, right? The cap is tight. We only have $33 million. So we got Andrew Wiley, and he's going to give us some swing guard, swing tackle ability. Same thing with Christensen. I want guys who are versatile. Christensen can play guard, tackle, center. He can probably play quarterback. No, I'm joking. But we need some depth on this offensive line. I love what Christensen could bring to the table. He actually was playing some right guard for the Panthers, and, he got a heavy dose of him versus football team. They kind of know about him. Anyway, I think Christensen, Wiley would really help out build some depth on this offense line, which has been so banged up. We need some guys in here. Chigakoko, our big offensive signing, 3 years, $30 million, 10 on average. I'm going to lower that cap for that first year and just kind of roll with it. That's kind of what this team's going to need to do. But Chigs can be a day one starter at the tight end room, give us a little bit more long-term viability at that tight end position. And it does depend which coach comes in here, because that would vary depending on if they want more of a blocking tight end or more of a receiving tight end. Defense, I'm going to get Alex Wright, a good solid rotational edge rusher, can be that number 3 guy. Here's our big signing, Tariq Woolen from Seattle. I know he's got some tackling issues, which this team has, had their fair share of tackling issues. I know you're like, another missed tackle guy, right, in our defense. But Tariq Woolen, I got to bring in somebody that can cover. Like, that's just what this is. He can be that big wide corner to cover those big wide receivers on the outside. 3 years, $54 million, $18 million. It's in the Charvarius Ward range of money. And then finally, Tony Adams, 1 year, $3 million. Got to steal a Jets player, of course, right? $3 million. He can come in and at least be a starter for this team and help them out. I got $11 million as the draft to spend. So here's the roster. Before we go into the draft, highlighting some of the needs once again. We still need to invest in the offensive line, draft and develop a center of the future with Brewer going to a contract year. James Daniel injury prone. We brought in depth for that, all right? And drafting and developing a right tackle of the future is still something I wouldn't mind, right? That's an area that we could draft anywhere depending on who is best player available at this point. And we can move Jackson inside if really needed be, if somebody that we can't pass up on is available. Wide receiver is definitely a need. I couldn't bring in a free agent wide receiver, just a little too expensive. So wide receiver is definitely a priority here. Maybe depth at running back or a blocking tight end. Those are options as well, but not high priorities. And then on the defense side of the ball, corner is still a need. Okay, maybe not a first round need at this point, but it's still a day 2 type of priority. Defensive line, we need depth. That is going to be something I look at. Linebacker, developing somebody for the future. We got our starters, but we could use somebody on late day 2, day 3 to be able to develop there. Same thing with safety too. It's time for the real deal drive time machine with Makai Lemon, and we're throwing ads out here. But Makai Lemon is somebody that I really thought about this too, because there's so many different ways that we could be looking at a defense. Of course, you say, but I saw the name Makai Lemon, and I said to myself, I just had a lemon too. I used it up, of course. What a perfect prop. No. But anyway, pull out your lemons. Well, with this one, the way I see it is, I would rather get a guy that I feel really, really good about with no major injury history or anything like that, because I'm sure you guys have seen a lot of that, and you're like, we're ready to move on. And of course, you never know, because you come out of college, and guys like Frank Gore had tons of injuries in college and then never had injuries in the NFL. I mean, of course, he dealt with his own injuries and stuff like that. All NFL players are dealing with injuries every week that we don't know. However, it's just something I'm thinking about really heavily with this team, with the amount of injuries that they have, as we're trying to get players that hopefully are going to be able to stay on the football field. Such a vital point for this football team. And Makai Lemon is super talented. I think he's a top 5 player even in the draft at the moment. And I'm not going to force any other position, even if it is a bigger need or whatever. You pair him up out there with Jalen Waddle. That's a dynamic booth. That's like a J-Mo and Amon-Ra, Wing Dragon of Ra, type of complementary skill set. Exactly. It's kind of, I feel like it is a little bit similar too. And actually, both guys were Alabama and then USC receivers. Let's go. I just realized that. But anyway, that's a whole different side note. So we got our own little Detroit Lion, Amon-Ra, Wing Dragon of Ra, and J-Mo pairing in here with Makai Lemon and now Jalen Waddle. So I like it. I really think that he's just a great football player, and that's what we're trying to build here on to the second round. Now we're going to go ahead and try to reel it in. We're going to go get a corner to help out this secondary. Key Abney the second, the corner from Arizona State, the Sun Devil. Oh, we get the Trojan horse. Now we get the Sun Devil. I just got to go with those, man. The pitchforks are out because we need help in the secondary. He's going to compete in here with Storm Duck. The thing that's going to get questioned, I think, with Abney, maybe is a little bit like the overall size. Will he get bullied versus bigger receivers? We brought in Tariq Woolen in free agency, so we got that bigger guy to cover those bigger wide receivers. You could keep Abney one of the more fluid, instinctual corners in the draft. I just think he is so sticky in coverage. Let's get some help in that secondary, much needed. Then we're going to go Jake Slaughter. We're going to get a center. And I also think he could play guard. Like, I'm not super worried about the length. I think he can play guard and hold up if a team needed him to. So something that you put him in at guard if you need to early on, especially if James Daniel's injured or if Savanaia is struggling, then you bring in some competition with Jake Slaughter. Like, I just want to make sure we're bringing in more competition on this offensive line. Not to mention Aaron Brewer going into a contract year next season. He could be the long-term center for this football team. Overall, just trying to improve the offensive line. Our next third-round pick, A.J. Halsey, formerly from Houston, transferred to LSU, and it's paying big time. I mean, the guy was a ball hawk last season at Houston. He continues to be a bit of a ball hawk this year. Picked off, I think, DJ Lagway early on, kind of jumped in front of it there. He is a guy that is impressive with his ball skills, but he is also just tough as nails. You look at him too, and this isn't even a full picture, but he is rocked up to the gills, 5'11", 2 or 5.2, whatever. Just a little over 5'11" and 222 pounds. That's a rocked up guy. He could play linebacker for some teams out here. but he's got enough speed to play in the back end. And I want to go ahead and draft and develop a Minka Fitzpatrick sort of mold, a little bit different, but in many ways, he can do some of the similar things there. Halsey, a lot of potential here, and definitely can help out that secondary, add some more competition with Tony Adams in the rotation early on, and then be the long-term starter too for this team. Because, hey, both of those guys would be free agents, even if we bring in a Tony Adams for a season. 2027, Minka and Adams would be free agents. So we definitely need to invest in the safety position. Number 4, Orlando Barden is going to be the pick here, the linebacker from Utah. The Ute man is going to help be a developmental linebacker. And with both of those guys being free agents, I just think it makes a lot of sense to continue to invest with Dotson and then Brooks both coming up on contract years as well. And with Barden, he's actually had a recovery season this year. He's played very good, been a very solid run defender, which is something they could use. All right, they could definitely use that right now. So Orlando Barden comes in there, it could be a nice little tackling machine. And he's got some decent athleticism as well to drop back in coverage. Good size, definitely fits the bill. He was being hyped up big time last year. Had a down season. This year he's recovered. So we'll see where that draft stock lands up. But I think in this range, I think it makes a lot of sense to get yourself a developmental linebacker. Next pick here, we're going to Iowa, and we're taking a pass rusher, Max Llewellyn here. And he's somebody that I think could be a good DPR for this football team. And that's really just, I'm trying to get a little bit of depth in here behind Alex Wright. That's really what the goal is. Of course, the starters too with Phillips and Chop, but Llewellyn just gives him a little bit more, and he has a lot of upside to it, I feel like. Now, he's not the longest guy per se. He's got good, solid size overall. He's got a really dangerous spin move, so I just think he's going to be a really nice pass rusher for whoever gets him. And if he can get better with his leverage in the run game, I know run game stuff is going to be big too for this team, and that is going to be something he has to really work on. But Max Llewellyn here from Iowa can be a nice little 4th-round selection for them that I think can certainly add some much-needed depth into the room, especially, like I said, we're a little thin at this point after letting go of Bradley Chubb. On to our next pick, we're taking another Max. We're getting mad with the Maxes. Max E. Honachor. Say that 10 times fast. Max E. Honachor. E. Honachor. What a great name. Anyway, I am going to take him here as a developmental right tackle for Austin Jackson. He's a dude that I think at this point could be something like he's different than Braxton Jones, but in terms of like a developmental guy at this point in the draft, maybe it makes sense to try to get somebody here. And he's got a lot of traits you look for like that, right? He's got enough athleticism. He's not the most athletic guy, but he's got hulking size at 6'6", 330 pounds. He's got to have like at least 34-inch arms, I feel like, out there. The dude, he looks long. He can use his length. And I've only watched limited film on Maxi Honachor, but I was pretty impressed with what I saw. So we'll see where he ends up going. I'm going to go and list him here right now and get ourselves a nice little developmental right tackle. And then final pick of the draft, Jamal Haynes from Georgia Tech, the guy, the jackrabbit over there, the golden jacket, should I say, not a jackrabbit, but he is kind of a jackrabbit because he's got insane speed, really athleticism. And he's going to be more special teams help, if nothing else, for them, even though you got Malik Washington. I just want to bring a little bit more rotation, especially if Jalen Wright and maybe a new regime wants to move on or do whatever, or even if the current regime wanted to move on at some point. Like, I know there are some things going on there, and we'll figure it out. But I think Jamal Haynes gives him a little bit more help and a little more rotation. This last pick was just a little bit of a throw out there, and I like Jamal Haynes a lot, even though I think he's on a bit of a down year this year in Georgia Tech. Overall, still a playmaker and somebody that I think can help them out as another weapon in the offense, whether it's receiving or as a gadget player for them. He does have a former wide receiver background. So that is the draft here, and this is the recap now. Let's go ahead and take a look at the roster after free agency after the draft. Did we improve the team? Of course, that's a big question. I think so. Look, as I mentioned earlier with Mekhi Lemon and Jalen Waddle, the more I think about that is just like a J-Mo, Amon-Ra, all pictured in type of combination here. And then you got your Chigakonkwo tight end here. I mean, not quite Sam Laporta potty, but definitely a good one, right? Sam Laporta, I love him. And Chigakonkwo, though, does help him out in that tight end room. Give him a little more long-term viability in that spot. And we do add in some depth between running back and offensive line. Like, offensive line, obviously, a huge need that I'm hoping that they address. And we add in Jake Slaughter and Max Honachor there, but also Christensen and Wiley will be more of like day one impacts for this team, too, especially if you have injuries or if Savaiinaea is just not quite stepping up enough at that point. Like, we need to have help. We need to protect Tua, especially with the concussion thing. Like, we need to make sure we're doing that. It's such a priority, and leaning on the run game as much as possible too. On the defense side of the ball, my main focus was definitely to try to improve the secondary between AJ Halsey, Keith Abney, 2 day 2 picks, trying to help them out in that regard. And then Tyreek Woolen in free agency. And also Tony Adams, too. And Adams is a solid player. I feel like Adams has been solid for the Jets this season. Not like unbelievable. Their secondary's had a lot of miscues. It's partially on coaching, too. But Adams is a good player and somebody that I actually don't think that, we may want to try to keep around. Who knows? But Halsey and going to be a nice little developmental safety with Abney, who will compete right away with Storm Duck, one of the greatest football names right out. And Storm Duck. How can you hate that name? Storm Duck. I mean, what's your name? Storm Duck. That's just like an epic movie right there waiting to happen. Like, that should be a movie character right now. And then with the defensive line, I just want to try to get some more depth in here. Alex Wright in free agency, and then Max Louis Allen as well. So really not a whole ton of defensive line. It is a little tricky that I didn't get any defensive tackles. I get it. Now, they could bring in, like, this is something where I would say, hey, maybe it wasn't anything in the draft or in free agency one, but you can go out there and bring in a veteran defensive tackle that is still out there. There's going to be guys. There are every single free agency period. I feel like they're always going through the cracks. I would recommend that. And plus, remember, you can also get some more money later with like maybe a post-June 1st cut or just clearing a little bit more money. You can restructure somebody else. So that would be my one little recommendation here is maybe you want to pick up one more veteran. And that's also something where you have to kind of feel up. Since they've got so many young players, I didn't want to force that either right now because we don't really know what we have yet. Like Kenny Grant, Jordan Phillips, Zeke Biggers, those guys heading into year number 2, they may show up and be totally different football players. Like that's defensive tackle in a nutshell. So that's kind of I try why I didn't go and spend big on it or anything like that. I want to see how I would really want to see how those guys come along, and then I would make that decision come training camp. All right, let's go ahead and bring in a Andrew Billings who's available, or somebody like that who could be out on free agency market to be able to pay and then do something like that. That'd be very cheap and all those sort of things. So that's really where I'm at with that. Linebacker to finish it up, Landon Barton, going to give us some more development. I know they're a little thin. That's another area where you might have to bring in a veteran or somebody to complement. 5 linebackers, though. You can keep those 5 guys, and we'd be fine with that. And that would come down to the scheme and a new defense coordinator if they have somebody coming in there for Weaver or whatever. But that's going to do it here for the Miami Dolphins. Fins up, man. Let's get the fins up. Keep your head up because I think this roster, it is a little bit rough right now, but they have a lot of draft capital. And that's what I'm saying. Like, they can turn this around quick. It's not like this roster is horrific or anything like that. It's just they're missing a couple of key pieces. I think coaching might have to make some changes here and there. And they got to focus on the trenches, man. They really do, especially on the offense side of the ball. And they focused on the defense, no doubt about it. And just right now hasn't quite paid off at the moment. So there's just a lot of things, development, weight room, et cetera, et cetera. I think those are areas that they need to really look at too this offseason. So let me know what you think. Agree or disagree, Fins fans. I hope you guys have a really good day, though. And I'll talk to you real soon.